My daughter told me I deserved the world, then handed me a one-way plane ticket and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She said I needed rest, space, and sunshine. What I needed, it turns out, was a plan to get my life back. You see, I was a U.S. postmaster for 30 years. I know how systems work. I know how to trace a package, reroute a delivery, and lock down a mailbox. So when I discovered the vacation she gifted me had no return date, I didn't panic. I packed something much stronger than sunscreen. I packed my instincts. While they were popping champagne in my living room, I was logging in, securing passwords, rerouting mail, and drafting a comeback they'd never see coming. They sent me away. They thought I'd vanish quietly. But they forgot one thing. You never underestimate a woman who ran the mail, because now I'm delivering something of my own, a reckoning. The morning sun poured through the gauzy, white curtains of my kitchen window, lighting the tiny specks of dust that danced in the still air. It was the kind of quiet that didn't need filling. The soft creak of floorboards beneath my slippers, the tick of the wall clock, the rustle of wind through the garden my late husband Tom had tended for decades. That garden, with its rows of hydrangeas and heirloom roses, was more than a collection of plants. It was a love letter. Each bloom, each thorn, had history sewn into its roots. I'm Margaret, 65 years old, retired postmaster and firmly rooted in the town of Maple Hollow, Kentucky. After 30 years managing routes, people, and a system that never stopped moving, I had come to appreciate the beauty of stillness. I wasn't restless like many people my age. I didn't crave cruise ships or vacation homes. I had a porch swing, a garden that needed pruning, and memories in every drawer and doorknob of this old house. That was enough. Tom passed away 8 years ago. He was the calm to my order, the one who brewed coffee before I woke and laid out my favorite gardening gloves when spring rolled around. Since then, this house had become my sanctuary. I knew every creak in the stairs, every floorboard that moaned when it rained, and now it was just me. And the quiet, which didn't feel lonely, it felt earned. That morning, as I poured myself a cup of tea and carried it to the porch, I heard the crunch of gravel in the driveway. A sleek silver SUV, all chrome and confidence, pulled in without so much as a warning call. My daughter Emily stepped out first, wearing heels too high for comfort and a dress that looked more like a magazine ad than something practical. Behind her came Jordan, her husband, one of those men who smiled with his mouth but never with his eyes. He was already on his phone, barking orders, gesturing like the world owed him something. "Mom!" Emily called, her voice airy, excited. "Surprise!" I smiled and stepped off the porch, brushing the dirt from my hands. Emily rushed up, her perfume strong and citrusy, drowning the scent of the blooming garden. She hugged me tightly, too tightly, the kind of hug you give when you're trying to distract someone. Jordan followed behind, offering a smile that flickered like a bad fluorescent light. "Margaret, looking great. Retirement suits you." I nodded politely and gestured toward the house. "Come in, I just brewed tea." Inside, the house swallowed their energy like a sponge. The old wooden beams, the faded floral wallpaper, the knotted rugs underfoot. It wasn't their world. It was mine. I poured iced tea into glasses and set out some cookies from a tin I kept for visits like this. They sat across from me at the oak kitchen table, the one Tom built with his own hands. "We came because we have something special to share," Emily said, sliding a glossy brochure across the table. Her eyes sparkled with something I couldn't quite name. Anticipation, maybe, or calculation. I picked up the brochure and tilted my head. A pristine beach, turquoise water, cabanas under palm trees. Sabze Palms Resort, I read aloud. Florida? 1 month. All expenses paid, Jordan said, his voice smooth. We used our rewards points, booked everything. It's a gift. For you. I blinked. A whole month? Think of it as a reset, Emily chimed in. You've done so much for everyone. You need to think about you now. Sleep in, eat fresh fruit, walk barefoot in the sand. Doesn't that sound amazing? It did. It also sounded deeply unsettling. I have the garden, I said softly, and the house, the bills, the mail. We've thought of everything. Jordan cut in. We'll stay here while you're gone. Keep an eye on the place. Water your plants. It'll be seamless. I looked around the kitchen, the cabinet with the chipped handle Tom never got around to fixing, the photo frame above the sink with his crooked grin staring back at me. My eyes stung. I don't know, I said honestly. I haven't been away for more than a few days since Tom died. Emily reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You deserve this, Mom. Let us take care of you for once. My heart, traitorous and tender, swelled. I'd spent my life saying yes to others, especially her. To see her looking at me like that, so earnest, made me want to believe her. I smiled slowly, hesitant but genuine. All right, I whispered, just don't let the hydrangeas wilt. Emily beamed. Jordan gave a satisfied nod, and somewhere deep inside, a part of me stirred, unsure if I had just accepted a gift or signed something away. Emily folded her hands on the table and leaned in closer, her voice soft but oddly rehearsed. Mom, this isn't just a vacation. This is a way for you to begin again, to really live. She smiled wide, but her eyes didn't quite match the sentiment. This house, this town, they're filled with memories, yes, but also with limits. Maybe it's time to breathe somewhere new. The words settled strangely in my chest. Begin again? I echoed. I wasn't sure what needed beginning. My life had already been full. Love, loss, work, growth. Why did she speak like I'd been dormant? Jordan took over, flashing his trademark confident grin. And when you come back, we can sit down and talk through some options. I've been meaning to help you sort through your finances, restructure the house deed, simplify your portfolio, prepare for the future. Something in me flinched. I had always managed my money. I had retired debt-free. Tom and I had planned everything. We weren't rich, but we were stable, safe, secure. Why would anything need restructuring? Still, I nodded. The idea of someone else managing things, even temporarily, scratched at something deep inside me. But they were offering help. I'd spent so many years giving. Maybe it was time to receive. The next few days passed like a strange, soft blur. Emily and Jordan visited daily. Packing became an event. Emily brought new suitcases, sleek, expensive ones with tags still on. You can't go to paradise with duct-taped luggage. She laughed. She swept into my room like a whirlwind, flinging open drawers, appraising clothes. Let's stick with modern pieces, she murmured, folding older dresses into a pile labeled storage. I watched, more observer than participant, as my closet became hers to curate. Jordan hovered around the living room, pacing, occasionally tapping notes into his phone. I caught him standing in front of the glass cabinet where I kept the good china, the antique vase Tom's grandmother left us. His gaze lingered a little too long on the delicate box tucked at the back of the shelf, velvet-lined, home to my most treasured jewelry. You should take these with you, Emily said as she held the box in her hands. You'll want to dress up for dinner at the resort. She opened the lid, revealing the string of pearls Tom gave me on our 25th anniversary and a pair of small diamond earrings from my mother. I don't know, I started, but she cut in gently. They're wasted in a drawer. You should enjoy them. Then Jordan's hand brushed the edge of the box, fingers pausing ever so slightly on the gold watch Tom wore to his retirement dinner. Take this too, he said. So you have a piece of Dad with you. The moment stretched, tight and airless. I wanted to say no, but saying no would mean mistrusting them, my own daughter, her husband, and what would that say about me? So I nodded. Okay, just be careful with them. Jordan smiled, but his eyes flicked too quickly back to the hallway. I made a mental note of it, then tried to forget I had. Packing the last of my things, I lingered in the garden. The air was heavy with the sweet scent of late spring blooms. The hydrangeas Tom loved were in their full glory, blues and pinks depending on the soil's whim. I knelt beside them, brushing away a weed, feeling the cool dirt between my fingers. Emily called out from the porch, "Mom, we're ready to go." I looked up, blinking away a sting in my eyes. The SUV was packed. The resort information had been emailed. My suitcase, now unfamiliar and far too clean, waited in the trunk. Emily hugged me again, longer this time. "This is going to change everything for you," she whispered. "You'll see." I stepped onto the porch one last time. The boards creaked underfoot, their familiar song echoing through my memory. I turned, taking in the chipped paint on the windowsill, the wind chimes made from old spoons, the rocking chair Tom sanded by hand. My fingers brushed the door frame as I passed through, the touch deliberate. They watched as I climbed into the car. Emily beamed. Jordan nodded. The driveway curved gently away from the house, and as we pulled onto the road, I twisted in my seat for one final look. The garden glowed under the morning sun. The mailbox stood straight, still bearing my name in hand-painted letters. It wasn't just a house, it was everything I'd built, every decision, every sacrifice, every joy. I didn't know it then, but I wasn't just stepping away from bricks and wood and memories. I was stepping away from control, from ownership, from something far bigger, something I might not get back. The air in Florida felt different. It was thick, perfumed with sea salt and hibiscus, warm like an embrace I didn't ask for. The resort stood like a postcard brought to life. Sabzi Palms, with its whitewashed villas, crystal blue pools, and staff in crisp uniforms flashing trained smiles. A bellhop greeted me with forced cheerfulness, offering a drink I didn't want and a map I'd never use. My room was spacious, filled with white linens, minimalist furniture, and not a single item out of place. It was too clean, too curated. The balcony looked out onto a meticulously trimmed lawn that sloped toward the beach, where palm trees stood like sentries guarding paradise. But it wasn't paradise. It was sterile, lifeless. I unpacked slowly, unsure where to put things in a place that didn't feel mine. My sundress hung awkwardly in the armoire, next to robes too plush to touch. I tried to settle. I sat on the balcony with tea I didn't drink, watched couples walking hand in hand below. Laughter rose from the pool like smoke, fleeting, untouchable. It made me feel like a ghost. The next morning I called home. Emily answered on the second ring. "Hi, Mom, how's the beach? Isn't it perfect?" "It's very nice," I said. "Just different. How are things there?" "Oh, busy. Jordan and I are organizing a few things while you're gone. He's going through the garage, decluttering." She laughed as if that were charming, not invasive. "Anyway, I can't talk long. I have a Zoom call starting. Love you." Before I could reply, the line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand. A small chill crept down my spine. I tried again the next day, and the one after that. Every time I got the same. Emily answering, chirping something cheerful and vague, and ending the call with increasing haste. No background noise. No sign of activity in the house I had lived in for 40 years. By the third day, I started noticing things, or rather, the absence of them. The itinerary Emily printed for me, one page, single-sided, had no mention of a return flight. No confirmation number, no airline contact. I had assumed they'd booked a round trip, but the detail gnawed at me. I opened my laptop and pulled up the airline's website. I entered the code from the page, then my name, and clicked Find My Trip. Flight 1279, Portland to Miami. Departure, July 3rd. Seat 14A. I scrolled for the return. Nothing. Just one line, one flight. The page displayed two chilling words near the top of the screen. Trip type, one way. For a moment, I thought it must be a glitch. I refreshed, re-entered the details, tried different tabs, but each time the result was the same. My heart thudded hard. A cold pressure spread in my chest. I clicked through the support chat trying to request information. The agent confirmed it. There is no return flight booked on this reservation. I sat back, the world tilting. A one-way trip. Who sends their mother away with no return? Suddenly, everything shifted. Emily's insistence, Jordan's strange glances, the push to pack, the jewelry, the "we'll handle things." It had all felt loving at the time, but in hindsight, it looked like displacement, like removal. I stared at the pale walls of the resort room. Perfect, cold, impersonal, a beautiful box, and I was the package they'd sealed and shipped away. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, laptop still glowing beside me. The room was silent except for the distant hum of air conditioning and the ocean. Too far to be heard, but close enough to press against the windows like a memory. My fingers trembled on my lap. A one-way ticket. They'd sent me away. Not for rest, not for love, but to be erased. The realization hit me like a wave breaking over brittle bones. I couldn't breathe. I clutched the hem of my cardigan and bent forward, willing the air back into my lungs. My eyes blurred. In my mind, I saw Tom, the curve of his smile, the quiet assurance in his voice when things fell apart, his hands planting hydrangeas the year we lost his mother, his arms around me the night we burned the mortgage papers. Now I was here, in a strange bed, in a strange state, and I didn't even know if my home still looked like I left it. Tears came without sound, heavy, aching sobs. They soaked the collar of my blouse. My chest heaved and I whispered his name. "Tom, I'm so sorry." I wasn't sorry for trusting Emily. I was sorry I hadn't seen it sooner. Sorry I hadn't protected the life we built. I don't know how long I sat like that, folded in on myself like an abandoned letter, but when I looked up, the sun had dipped low, casting the room in gold. My laptop pinged, an email alert. Still dazed, I leaned over and opened it. Subject, action required, unusual. Login, attempt detected. The logo looked familiar, too familiar, Bank of America. But something was off. The salutation read, "Dear customer, not dear Margaret." The grammar, slightly clunky. A link urging me to reconfirm your access for your safety. My breath caught. I didn't click it. I dealt with phishing scams for years. This wasn't from the bank. It was a trap. But it told me something more terrifying than any email scam could. Someone out there was trying to get into my financials, and I knew exactly who. Jordan. The casual way he'd mentioned restructuring my estate, his interest in the jewelry, the speed with which he wanted me gone. This wasn't some miscommunication. This was orchestrated, planned, executed. I closed the laptop slowly, every breath deliberate. My grief hardened into something else, steel, cold, and sharp. I may have spent 30 years in the mail service, but what they never saw was what that meant. I ran logistics, budgets, people, emergencies. I could sniff out fraud faster than a bloodhound. And if they thought I had grown soft because I liked to prune roses and drink tea, they were about to learn otherwise. I reached for my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't dialed in years. Carol Hughes, retired USPS systems analyst, my partner during budget recons in the 90s, now living north of Seattle with 2 dogs and a legendary sense of discretion. The phone rang twice. "Brenda?" Her voice was exactly the same, dry, sharp, laced with sarcasm and concern. "It's Margaret now," I corrected gently. "But yes, it's me." "Well, I'll be damned," she said. "I thought you were in Florida. You vanished for months and now you're calling like we just had coffee yesterday. I need your help." Her tone shifted instantly. "What's wrong?" I told her everything. Every word. No sugarcoating, no pauses. By the time I finished, the sun had vanished, and I was sitting in the dark with only the lamp by the bed casting light. Carol didn't say anything for a long moment, then, "Okay, first step, you lock down your money. Second, you cut the paper trail. You've still got your USPS login?" "I never deleted it," I said, "out of habit." "Good," she replied. "You were always better at systems than I was. Time to prove it." We talked logistics, passwords, forwarding addresses, P.O. boxes. She offered her spare room near SeaTac, said no one would think to look for me in her sleepy cul-de-sac. We set a timeline. 2 days. I would leave early, quietly, reroute everything. As we ended the call, her voice softened. "You all right, Margaret?" "No," I said, "but I will be." After hanging up, I stood and crossed the room to the full-length mirror by the closet. My reflection looked tired. Puffy eyes, creased blouse, mouth drawn tight. But behind all that, I saw someone else. I saw the woman who once rerouted a full district's mail through 3 cities in under 24 hours during a snowstorm, who negotiated union schedules and federal budgets, who raised a child on government salary and built a home from nothing. I met my own gaze and whispered, "They think I'm just an old woman." I straightened my back, chin lifted. Let's remind them who I really am. The room was still and quiet, but I was a storm beneath the surface. I hadn't slept. There wasn't time. My mind had entered the mode I hadn't touched in years, the precise analytical state I used to navigate budget audits and reroute thousands of parcels during weather shutdowns. This was no longer a vacation. This was an operation, and I was taking it back. First things first. My money. I opened my laptop, fingers moving with a clarity that had returned like muscle memory. I logged into my online banking portal. Then into my federal retirement account, the TSP, a lifeline built over decades of small contributions and cautious planning. Next came my Social Security login. With each account, I took action. I changed passwords, no more birth dates or pet names. Each one became a labyrinth of random letters, numbers, and symbols I committed to a physical notebook I'd keep on me at all times. I enabled 2-factor authentication for everything, making sure each code would go only to my phone. My breath slowed with each successful update. The financial lifelines they may have been circling were now fortified behind digital walls they'd never scale. Next, I tackled the mail. Emily and Jordan probably didn't realize the importance of a mailbox, but I did. Mail is more than envelopes. It's information, power, legality, identity. I logged into my USPS account and placed a 30-day hold on all mail delivery to my address in Maple Hollow. Nothing would enter that box now. Not a credit card, not a utility bill, not even a grocery coupon. Their stream of personal access was officially cut. Then I went a step further. I submitted a change of address request online, this time rerouting everything to a new P.O. box in the suburbs outside Seattle, a town no one would associate with me. The name and ID were registered under my full legal identity. Only I would hold the key. Every invoice, every statement, every bit of mail with my name on it was now moving hundreds of miles away from the house they occupied. They could sit in my living room all day, but legally, I had left the building. With the paper trail now under my control, I opened a new incognito browser window and searched for flights. A direct route back to Portland was too risky. If Emily or Jordan had even a hint of suspicion, that would be the first place they'd check. Instead, I chose Seattle. Carol would meet me. I could land, reset, and plan from a distance. Seattle was close enough to drive to Maple Hollow, but far enough to disappear. I found a seat on a flight departing the next evening. No frills, one carry-on, one name, mine. I booked the ticket under a digital alias I'd used once years ago for a conference. Still legal, still linked to my ID, but not something that would ping in a search. Then I reserved a week-long car rental, prepaid with a secure wallet account not linked to my main bank. The operation was airtight. By the time the sun cracked over the horizon, I had built a fortress, every cent protected, every document redirected, every piece of my identity pulled back from the hands of those who thought they could control it. I shut the laptop gently and took a deep breath. For the first time in days, the fear had quieted. In its place was something older, stronger, determination. I slipped on a pair of walking shoes and left the resort room without a sound. The ocean air still smelled of hibiscus and salt. People laughed around the pool. A bartender smiled at me as I passed, not knowing I wasn't just going for a stroll. I was staging a return, but I wouldn't come back as the woman they tried to push away. I'd come back on my own terms, with the law, the proof, and the strength of everything they underestimated. This wasn't just about getting home. It was about taking it back. Carol's house sat nestled beneath towering pines just outside Seattle. It was quiet, removed from the hum of the city, the kind of place where secrets could rest and strategies could form. When I stepped inside, it was like slipping into a memory. Mugs from old USPS conventions lined her shelf, and the scent of fresh coffee wafted from her modest kitchen. Carol didn't waste time. She laid out a notepad on the dining table, poured us each a cup, and opened her laptop. "All right, soldier, let's map this thing out." I smiled, but it didn't quite reach my eyes. "They don't know I'm gone yet." "Good," she has said. "Let's keep it that way. Tell me everything, from the moment they offered this Vamayan." We worked for over an hour, piecing together timelines, reviewing the travel documents, analyzing the email scam Jordan had attempted. Carol tapped keys like she was still back at Central Command, her fingers flying. She paused only once. "You said his name is Jordan Carter," she asked. I nodded. She frowned. Margaret, I think I met that man." My blood turned cold. Carol got up and returned with an old conference program from 5 years ago. "There was a financial seminar in Spokane," she said, flipping through the pages. "He was listed as a speaker, claimed to be a turnaround strategist for bankrupt companies, but something was off. Slick talker, too many buzzwords." She looked at me gravely. "A month later, I read about his arrest. He was involved in a fraudulent investment scheme, took retirement money from half a dozen clients, got a suspended sentence, and disappeared." I stared at her, numb. "You're telling me he has a criminal record?" Carol nodded. "It was hushed. He cut a deal. No jail time, but his license was revoked in 3 states. My heart dropped. Emily knew, or at least she should have. And if she didn't, why hadn't she asked? Why hadn't she done the most basic thing? Protect her own mother? That was the sharpest pain yet. Not the betrayal by Jordan, but the possibility that Emily knew what he was and still chose to stand beside him. I looked down at the table, blinking back the sting in my eyes. She used to sit on my lap and ask me if angels were real. I whispered. Now she's helping a man steal my life. Carol placed her hand gently over mine. "You're not alone, and we're not done." I sat up straighter. Together, we began assembling my counterattack. First, documentation. Carol printed a full set of legal property records showing my sole ownership of the house. No co-owners, no lease agreements, no tenants. I compiled my bank statements, account security changes, and evidence of identity protection steps. We created a file labeled Margaret Holmes versus Carter. Then I found a lawyer. Carol recommended one. Retired, but with a sharp mind and a strong sense of justice. I sent him a preliminary email, attached all the documents, and scheduled a virtual consultation. His reply was quick and direct. "You have a strong position. If they contest your re-entry, I'll be ready." Next, I hired a locksmith. A reputable firm in Portland confirmed an appointment for 2 days later. Full reeking of doors, windows, garage, and basement. Following that, I contacted a home security company, Stark Security Solutions. I scheduled an installation visit for the same afternoon. "We'll outfit you with full perimeter sensors, keypads, and outdoor motion cams," the rep said over the phone. "We can even install a panic button and interior camera if needed." "Do it," I told him. But I wasn't finished. I remembered an old USPS tech conference where a vendor had showcased mini surveillance equipment, smaller than a thumb drive, streaming ready, motion activated. I found a vendor online and had a device rush shipped to Carol's house overnight. It would be discreetly placed in my kitchen, set to go live the moment I returned. "Why the live stream?" Carol asked. "Because if something happens, if they try to block me or worse, the world needs to see it. I won't be pushed into silence." I imagine that camera, hidden behind a book on the shelf or tucked beneath the spice rack, watching, listening, witnessing. It wouldn't be revenge, it would be proof. If they tried to twist my story, I'd have the truth on tape. That night, as I stood in Carol's guest room brushing my hair, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Gone was the fragile woman who had once sat weeping in a hotel room. In her place was someone sharper, someone reclaimed. I met my own gaze and whispered, "They think I'm just some frail old woman." My voice didn't tremble. Now they'll remember I was a federal officer once. And I never lost a route I didn't fight for. The engine was off, the keys in my lap, and the air inside the rental car held the tight stillness of anticipation. I sat parked 2 blocks away from my home, my sanctuary, watching through a slight gap in the trees. It felt like surveillance, like I had done countless times as a federal supervisor checking on route audits or missing packages. But this time, it wasn't mail I was tracking. It was my life. From my vantage point, I could see them. Emily and Jordan stood on the porch, moving with the practiced choreography of people who had decided the house was already theirs. Emily's hair was pinned up, her designer sunglasses perched on her head, while Jordan was shirtless in athletic shorts, pacing with his phone glued to his ear. I didn't need to hear the conversation to read the frustration in his body language. Jordan was trying to sell something, fast. He hung up, turned to Emily, and waved his phone in the air like a weapon. "They won't send a new card until the first one's activated," he snapped. Emily responded too quickly, her voice high and tight. "Just wait a little longer. Maybe it's delayed." "Delayed?" Jordan barked. "We've been checking that mailbox for 5 days and haven't gotten a single envelope, not even a coupon flyer. It's not delayed. It's shut off." Emily bit her lip and looked toward the mailbox. She couldn't know, that her guess was almost right. The flow hadn't just stopped. I had rerouted the river upstream. The sight of them on my porch made something cold knot inside me. They didn't just move in. They were settling in. Furniture was shifted. Boxes were gone. I recognized the faint outline of my mother's antique mirror hanging in the front hallway, now crooked, like an insult. Through the bay window, I spotted my kitchen table cleared, a tripod set up next to it. My gut twisted. They were photographing my furniture. I zoomed in on my phone camera. Emily was holding a smartphone toward my grandmother's sideboard, while Jordan adjusted the lighting with his phone's flashlight. I could almost hear her. Make it look vintage, not old. A pang hit my chest so sharp I had to grip the steering wheel to steady myself. They weren't borrowing my space. They were dismantling it, listing it piece by piece, turning memories into transactions. Then I saw Jordan walk back inside and return with a suit jacket on a hanger. Tom's. No. I sat straighter, rage curling in my stomach like smoke. That jacket had hung in the back of our closet since the week he died. It still held the faint scent of cedar and the cologne he used once a year for our anniversary dinner. It wasn't just a garment, it was a goodbye I hadn't finished. Emily didn't flinch. She adjusted the collar and said something I couldn't hear. Jordan nodded, laughing. The betrayal felt total now. Guttural, sharp, but I didn't cry. I checked the time on my dashboard. 1:57 p.m., right on schedule. 3 minutes. I inhaled, exhaled. My hands were steady now. Years of coordination had trained me for this moment. You don't deliver mail during a snowstorm or flood unless you know how to move through chaos calmly. 1:59 p.m. I adjusted my side mirror, angled it toward the driveway, and then, right on cue, a white van with the words Ace Lock and Key 24/7 service turned onto my street and slowed in front of my house. Emily appeared first, stepping off the porch and walking down the front path with a furrowed brow. Jordan followed a few seconds later, already annoyed. The locksmith, a middle-aged man in a blue polo and tan slacks, stepped out, clipboard in hand. He glanced at the paper and looked up. "Brenda Holmes' residence?" Emily tilted her head. "Excuse me?" "Here to change all exterior locks," the locksmith said. "Scheduled for 2:00 p.m., paid in advance." Jordan stepped forward, puffing his chest. "There must be a mistake. We didn't order anything." The locksmith stayed calm, professional. It was scheduled online by the homeowner. Identification and work order confirmed. I leaned forward in my seat, heart racing but composed. Emily looked at Jordan, panic beginning to bloom on her face. She stepped forward. "I'm her daughter. I can call her," and the locksmith lifted a hand politely. "I was instructed to speak only with the property owner. If you're not her, I'm afraid I can't disclose details. But I've got a job to do." Emily's lips parted in disbelief. Jordan opened and closed his mouth like a stunned fish. And in that moment, I saw it. Recognition. Not just confusion, but fear. They knew. They knew the plan was falling apart. I sat back, breath steady. The first move was complete, and they were scrambling. I opened the car door slowly and stepped out into the warm afternoon light. The slam of the door behind me was deliberate, final. Emily turned at the sound, her face going pale like someone had seen a ghost. Jordan's eyes narrowed. He stepped slightly in front of her, but I didn't stop walking. My shoes clicked softly against the pavement as I made my way up the walkway. Each step, a quiet thunder. When I reached the edge of my front lawn, I paused. The locksmith stood still, holding his tools but looking between us, unsure whether to continue. I gave him a nod, calm, authoritative. "Please proceed. This is my home. I've authorized everything." He nodded back and walked toward the door without another word. Jordan stepped forward, arms tense, voice tight. "Brenda, what the hell is this?" I didn't answer him. I looked at Emily, her eyes welled with tears. She took one hesitant step closer. "Mom, I didn't know you'd come back so soon. We thought you'd be gone at least a month." I didn't blink. "You thought wrong." She let out a broken sob. "I just wanted you to have a better life, Mom. You never go anywhere. You sit in that house all day. I thought Florida would help you live again. You bought me a one-way ticket," I said evenly. "You didn't give me a vacation. You gave me an eviction." She wiped her face but didn't deny it. "We were scared you'd say no." "You were right." Jordan's voice cut in, louder now, trying to regain control. "You can't just show up and change the locks. We've been living here. We have rights." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. From my bag, I pulled out a folder, neatly tabbed, with legal documents and printed screenshots. I flipped the top page. "This is the deed to the house. Sole ownership. Margaret Holmes." Next page. "This is a 30-day hold notice filed with USPS. No mail has arrived at this address since last Tuesday." Next page. "This is a change of address confirmation. My name, my P.O. box, my signature. You haven't received a single piece of mail here. Legally, that means you don't reside here." I handed the folder to the locksmith to hold while I turned back to Jordan. "You're not on the mortgage, not on the lease. There is no lease. And the mail is the nail in the coffin." Jordan's lips twitched. "You think this is over? We'll get a lawyer. This is an illegal eviction. You'll be in court next week." I smiled, soft and cold. "Go ahead," I said. "And when the judge asks for proof of tenancy, what will you bring? Your Facebook Marketplace listings, the photo you took while pricing my dead husband's watch?" He looked away, jaw tight. Emily's shoulders slumped. I didn't want it to go this far. "You let it," I said. "You helped pack my things. You stood by as he priced out the furniture your father-in-law built with his own hands. You knew what was happening." Her voice trembled. "I just wanted you to be free." I took a step closer. "You wanted me to disappear." Then, as if on cue, the security technician arrived. He parked behind the locksmith and got out with a small toolkit and a screen tablet. "Stark Security, here for a full home installation. Motion sensors, external cams, panic button inside. Mrs. Holmes?" I nodded. "Right on time." Jordan stared in disbelief. "You had this planned?" "I had no choice," I said. "You made the first move. I'm making the last one." That's when the final twist snapped into place. A small beep echoed from my phone. I tapped the screen and turned it toward them. A live video feed played, crystal clear footage from a discreet camera inside the house, capturing every word that had been said. Jordan's voice, sharp. "The card didn't come. We need her account." Emily's whisper, "She's in Florida. She won't check anything until it's too late. The audio ended. The silence was suffocating. Jordan stepped back, fury and fear blending behind his eyes. I looked at both of them and smiled. "Thank you," I said softly. "That was your confession." Emily's mouth opened, but no words came. Jordan looked toward the street like he was weighing how fast he could run. I held my phone high, letting the silence stretch. "You thought I was just a woman past her prime. Someone you could move aside like an old box of dishes, but I was a postmaster for 3 decades. I've seen every scam. I've rerouted every lost soul back to their proper destination." I turned to the locksmith. "Continue your work." Then, without looking back, I stepped past them and walked through the front door of my house. The silence that followed their departure wasn't empty. It was sacred. The house, for the first time in weeks, breathed with me. The echoes of tension that had clung to the walls began to fade. I stood in the middle of the living room, my living room, and just listened. Tick. The soft rhythmic beat of the grandfather clock filled the space. Familiar. Steady. Mine. I exhaled, long and slow. Then I got to work. The first thing I did was open every window. The air inside felt stale, artificial. I let in the breeze, the scent of garden soil and warm asphalt. Then I moved through each room like a slow-moving wave, reclaiming the space, removing every trace of them. Their duffel bags, designer coats, and half-drunk protein shakes? Gone. The hallway closet, which they had stuffed with boxes marked storage, cleared. My bedroom, once rearranged like a showroom floor, now returned to its original shape. The drawers were put back. The jewelry they had so carefully suggested I take along was now locked in a safe, hidden in plain sight. When I stepped into the garden, the hydrangeas greeted me like old friends. I knelt down and ran my fingers through the soil. It was dry, neglected, but not lost. I grabbed my gloves, my old straw hat, and dug in. That afternoon, I uprooted the weeds that had crept in, pruned back the rose bushes Tom had once fussed over, and replanted the borders with fresh marigolds and zinnias. The sun beat down on my shoulders, and the ache in my knees told me I was alive. There was a rhythm in the dirt, a silence that healed. By sunset, the house was no longer a battleground. It was a sanctuary. But a sanctuary, I realized, wasn't enough. I had always believed retirement was meant to be quiet, a reward for decades of structure, discipline, and early mornings. But quiet could become isolation, and isolation, I now saw, was fertile ground for betrayal. I needed purpose. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I turned my old office into a workspace. I dusted off the big oak desk, hooked up my laptop, and placed a small handwritten sign on the bookshelf behind me. Federal Retirement Solutions, free guidance for seniors. At first, it was just a few neighbors, then friends from my old USPS walking group, then their cousins, their church friends, their parents. They came with paper grocery bags full of unopened Social Security letters, confusing pension options, and folders thick with unanswered questions. And I sat with them, each one, printing forms, highlighting deadlines, explaining every acronym they had ever feared. I didn't charge a dime. This was my repayment. For every woman who had baked a pie for a stranger, every man who had salted the neighbor's driveway in winter without being asked, for the elderly couple down the street who feared online banking, for the widower who didn't know how to claim survivor benefits. Each click of the printer was a small victory. Each thank you card that arrived in my mailbox reminded me that rebuilding doesn't always require noise. Sometimes healing is quiet work. Slowly, my social circle grew again. Carol came down from Seattle once a week. We sat on the porch with iced tea and debated policy changes at USPS, like two retired generals chuckling over old war stories. My walking group returned, not just for walks, but for potlucks. They brought casseroles, lemon pies, old photos. One afternoon, a neighbor dropped off a bouquet with a note. "You make us feel safer just by being here." I didn't need a parade. I didn't need headlines. What I had was deeper. This house wasn't just a roof and walls anymore. It was proof proof that resilience isn't loud, that women like me, women written off by society, even by our own families, carry generations of strength in our bones. That strength didn't need recognition. It just needed space to bloom again. It arrived on a Thursday afternoon, tucked between a thank you card from a widow in Idaho and the water bill. The envelope was pale pink, her handwriting unmistakable. Emily. I stood on the porch, fingers resting on the sealed flap, unmoving. The garden behind me bloomed bright and bold, zinnias and marigolds nodding in the breeze. The sun was warm on my neck. I opened it. Inside, a single page. No salutation, no formal closure. Just her words in messy, rushed script. Mom, I know you're angry. I don't blame you, but please understand, we didn't mean for it to go that far. Jordan lost his job. We panicked. I thought the house would just be easier. You always said you had savings. We just need a little to get back on our feet. Please, I'm still your daughter. No, I'm sorry. No accountability, just desperation, just another transaction disguised as affection. I folded the letter and placed it gently back into the envelope. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply walked into the kitchen, opened the drawer by the sink, and tucked the letter into the file marked personal. Not because I planned to revisit it, but because letting it sit out in the open felt wrong. It did not belong in the light. The next day, I got a call from my credit union. Mrs. Holmes, we just wanted to confirm, the woman said, her voice polite, hesitant. Did you recently authorize a new secondary card holder on your primary checking account? My blood ran cold. No, I said, absolutely not. The representative exhaled, a breath of quiet relief. Thank you for confirming. We flagged the request. Someone used your full name, social security number, and home address, claiming to be a caretaker. They submitted a notarized form, falsified clearly. Who submitted it? I asked, though I already knew. There was a pause. Someone named Jordan Mitchell. I closed my eyes for a brief second. I'd like to file a fraud report, I said calmly. I'll come in tomorrow with ID. Please lock down all pending activity and freeze remote requests until further notice. We already have, ma'am. I thanked her, hung up, and let the silence settle around me. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was theft. Attempted identity theft at that, and it was the final proof I needed. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't misguided love. This was manipulation, calculated and repeated. So I acted. That afternoon, I printed out every interaction, the email logs, the fake notary, the mailed letter, the recorded live stream admission. I filed a formal fraud report with the bank and submitted documentation to the Federal Trade Commission. Then I filed a flag with the Office of the Inspector General, because if Jordan or Emily ever attempted to use my retirement credentials again, there would be federal eyes waiting. I made copies of everything. I uploaded it to a secure drive, and then I locked it all in a fireproof box under my desk. That night, I didn't eat at the table. I ate in the garden. I sat on the bench Tom had built, the one under the lattice arch he planted with wisteria before his last spring. A breeze rustled through the leaves. The stars blinked into the deep blue sky. And I felt it. Not anger, not vindication. Something else. Peace. They had tried to erase me, to remove me from my home, my history, my name, but I was still here. I picked up the glass of iced tea beside me, sipped slowly, and looked out across the flower beds. The soil was soft, alive. Everything I had replanted had taken root again. A small smile pulled at the corner of my mouth. They wanted forgiveness, I whispered, but forgiveness is for the soul. I looked up at the sky, the soft hum of crickets in my ears. Justice, I said. Justice is for the system. And this system, it still had my name on every file. 2 months passed, and in that time my house transformed, not just in appearance, but in spirit. Gone were the shadows of betrayal, the echo of a daughter's calculated silence, and the smug footprints of a man who mistook greed for charm. In their place came something new, something warm, laughter. The backyard was alive with it. The grill sizzled with burgers and marinated vegetables, while the scent of freshly baked cornbread wafted from the kitchen. Folding chairs circled the lawn like old friends. At the center, a picnic table covered in checkered cloth groaned beneath platters of deviled eggs, potato salad, and pies brought by hands that knew how to feed more than hunger. Carol sat near the hydrangeas, fanning herself with a paper plate. Across from her, George, who once served in the Navy and now made a killer peach cobbler, regaled the table with stories about misdirected mail and lost packages that ended up starting romances. Everyone roared when he mimicked a lovesick delivery boy. I moved through the space with a tray of lemonade, stopping here and there to refill glasses, top off plates, laugh at jokes. I didn't host the gathering to prove anything, not to rebound, not to show I had moved on. I hosted it because I could, because no one was lurking behind my back waiting to measure furniture or rewrite my story, because this house, this garden, this yard, these steps belonged to me again. When I finally sat down near the trellis, legs crossed, a plate balanced in my lap, Carol raised her glass across the lawn. "To Margaret," she called, "our patron saint of peace, pensions, and properly grilled chicken." The group burst into applause. I laughed, shaking my head. Flatter me more and I'll open my books again. But the truth was, they weren't wrong. Over the last month, word had spread, not about what happened to me, that was private, but about what I now offered. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning, I opened my home office for one-on-one consulting. Free, confidential, no bureaucracy too tangled, no question too small. I helped a woman untangle survivor benefits from a late second husband she thought she'd never be entitled to. I showed a former railroad worker how to convert a pension that had sat dormant for 20 years. I even helped George's niece fix an identity mix-up with Medicare. It wasn't glamorous, but it was good, and it mattered. The front doorbell rang mid-afternoon. I wiped my hands on my apron and answered it to find a shy-looking man holding a clipboard. "Hi," he said. "I'm Kevin. I took over your mail route. Just wanted to introduce myself and drop off your certified letter from the Social Security office." He handed me the envelope, then looked over my shoulder into the backyard. "Wow," he added. "Looks like you've got quite the party going." I smiled, taking the envelope. "Feel free to grab a soda if you're off the clock." His face lit up. "Really?" "Just don't bring the mailbag." As Kevin wandered off to snag a cola, I looked down at the envelope and chuckled. My old postmaster self would have torn into it immediately. But today could wait. Today was about being surrounded, not by takers, but by givers. People who brought food instead of expectations, who sat beside me without plotting behind me. People who didn't call me mom, but made me feel like I still belonged. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't just feel safe in my home. I felt loved. The party had come and gone. The laughter still echoed faintly in the garden, like a melody the wind refused to forget. That night, I stood in my kitchen washing the last of the lemonade glasses, humming under my breath when the doorbell rang. It was nearly dusk. The sky outside glowed the color of ripe apricots. I dried my hands, walked to the door, and opened it to find no one. Just a plain manila envelope on the welcome mat. No name, no return address, only my name, written in small, neat handwriting I would recognize anywhere. Emily. I knelt slowly, picked it up, and carried it inside. My fingers trembled, not with fear, but with the ache of recognition. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same one where I used to braid her hair before school, where I taught her to write checks, to balance a budget, to make cornbread. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, blank, no plea, no accusation, no apology, nothing, just silence in ink form. And somehow that silence said more than all her words ever could. I sat back in the chair, holding the page between my fingers. It was weightless, like a breath you forgot to take, like a goodbye that had already happened long before the words caught up. "She has nothing left to say," I whispered. No explanation, no justification, not even anger. I stared at the paper for a long while, then carefully I folded it in half, then again. I didn't tear it. I didn't burn it. I didn't cry. I simply placed it in the drawer next to the one holding her last letter, the one that had asked for money. Now they sat together, 2 chapters of a story I had finally stopped reading, and I felt free. I walked out onto the front porch, the air still thick with the scent of barbecue and citronella candles. The sky had deepened to a warm indigo, the stars just beginning to emerge one by one like shy children peeking out from behind curtains. In my hands, I carried a mug of chamomile tea, steam curling like quiet prayers into the air. I sat on the porch swing, the same one Tom had fixed every spring without fail, and leaned back. The house behind me was quiet, not the kind of silence that comes from absence or fear, but the kind that follows fullness. I looked out at the yard, the garden, the quiet street, the house I nearly lost, the name I refused to surrender, the peace I had earned not through bitterness, but through resilience. For a long time, I thought my worth came from what I gave others, from how much I could carry, how much I could forgive, but sitting there, under the first breath of starlight, I realized something else. This, I murmured, raising the mug to my lips, is the first time in my life I've truly owned something. Not just the deed to the house, not just my savings or my name, but myself, my story, my power, all mine. The swing creaked gently beneath me, a lullaby in wood and iron. A single wind chime stirred above the doorway, and I smiled. "No one," I whispered, "can ever make me leave again."